The coronavirus pandemic has turned the NHS on its head. One of the most affected areas has been the world of dentistry. From March to August of 2020, all general dentistry was not just delayed, but cancelled. Half a year's worth of appointments simply wiped away from the calendar. That's tens of thousands of unseen patients missing their dental checkups. During this time period, only emergency dental procedures were allowed to go ahead, and even then, the process has been peppered with setbacks. I've spoken to the patients, the dentists, and the people responsible for keeping the cogs turning, whether it be private or on the NHS, isolating the issues that have plagued the individuals at every level during the lockdown. This is Dentistry and the Pandemic. In March of 2020, the UK government announced the first national lockdown.
The time has now come for us all to do more. From this evening, I must give the British people a very simple instruction. You must stay at home.
From this date, all general dentistry across the country was stopped. Only in extreme cases were patients seen for treatment. But even though the public were told that emergency cases were being seen, there was still a reluctance to go to the dentist. One council member of the British Association of Oral and Maxillofacial Surgeons told us that there were 4 main reasons the public have not been going to the dentist during the lockdowns. Either their dentists were closed, their dentists weren't accepting new patients, people didn't want to put themselves at risk of catching the coronavirus, or people simply didn't like going to the dentists even before the pandemic. Brian Potts is an 82-year-old retired accountant from Gisborough in North Yorkshire. In late March of 2020, an old filling of his came loose and fell out of place. He rang NHS 111, who told him that if he wasn't experiencing any pain, he wouldn't be seen by his dentist. He then phoned his dentist, who told him to go to the chemist and purchase a do-it-yourself home filling kit.
We rang up and they said, well, as soon as we can, we'll book you in. Have you got any pain? Because we can do it as an emergency. I said, no pain whatsoever. It's not a real problem as far as that goes.
So would you mind telling me about the entire process from the first initial filling falling out all the way up until it actually being sorted out? Because it was quite a considerable amount of time.
That was from May last year till, was it January, I think I said, 29th of January. Yeah, the filling would have to wait because they're only doing emergencies. If anyone had pain, then they would do it,
So after attempting to do the self-kits several times that the doctor said to try and do, that must have felt so demoralising after doing it so many times.
Well, I did it for a couple of days actually. I tried it and followed the way of doing that the dentist had recommended, but it wouldn't stain the stuff. You had to put it in with your finger actually. Felt as though it was a bit of a waste of time and, just didn't seem to work, and I had no confidence in it working.
This frustration has been felt across the country. Mark Jarrett lives in Petersfield and co-owns a podiatry practice. During the first lockdown, Mark experienced toothache, which later developed into a nasty dental abscess.
I struggled very badly with an infected tooth. Obviously, all I felt was just really bad pain, and it was over a series of days where I was over-medicating, probably a bit too much of the brandy to try and take the pain away. And so it was several days, and I tried to contact my old private dentist. They were shut. And then eventually I, at the weekend, rang 111 because I was in so much pain. By that time, my sister, who's a dental nurse for the NHS, had arranged an appointment at the local hospital for me in Chichester. Unfortunately, if it wasn't for her, I probably would have waited a long time to get my tooth out. I feel lucky that I knew certain people. I do, absolutely. I don't know what I would have done. I probably would have turned up at an A&E, and I don't know what they would have done, whether they said go away or whatever.
After hearing Mark and Brian's story, I wondered why the pandemic seemed to be affecting the dental world so adversely. I went to my dentist to see why the pandemic has had this effect. The key issue facing these dentists are so-called aerosol generating procedures, or AGPs. This could be just using the dental drill or cleaning somebody's teeth. But these AGPs create airborne water droplets, which make it the perfect breeding ground for coronavirus to spread.
Now, what we are realizing, where we are seeing more and more patients through the door, is we can't do things that we took for granted before, where patient would come for a checkup and we would automatically do a clean, a scale and a polish and things like that. We are just having to think before we offer anything to the patients, because it's not as easy anymore. Those type of procedures are called as AGPs, and we need to follow the surgery after those procedures. So it's not as simple. So we have to plan a bit more, think a bit more, and everything just takes a bit longer.
These AGPs adversely affect the fallow time being the time it takes for one patient to leave so the next can come in safely.
It was challenging to sort of see all the patients that needed to be seen, prioritize things. That was another challenge, and we were overwhelmed by emergencies from our own patients who were registered and from all around the area as well.
How many patients were you able to see in a day compared to now?
Oh, at least 3 times as many. Definitely, because we would, checkups, fillings, they were quick because we could do them then and there. Whereas now we have to book a slot and then have the fallow time of 20 minutes to half an hour, at least after every patient, and then take the cleaning time into account as well.
With fewer people being able to visit the dentist, there may be multiple missed cases of oral cancers being picked up. Early detection and prompt diagnosis is of paramount importance in ensuring optimal outcomes for cancer patients.
People go to the dentist routinely, and the great thing about a dental visit is not just looking at your teeth. Modern dentists will have a good look round the gums and the skin inside your mouth, and can spot white areas, patches and things that they're not sure about, and then they'll send them up to the hospital. And most of them, so 97% of those referrals turn out not to be cancer. But about 3%, this is throughout the UK, about 3% might be cancerous or precancerous. And so spotting those things early is really important. Certainly nationally, there is evidence that at least probably 50% of head and neck cancer patients have had delays to treatment, and relatively small tongue cancer, for example, would have a 95% survival at 5 years. However, if it spreads into the neck, that drops by 50%. So it could be 45% survival with just a small little tumour. And I think seeing the larger tumours, because either patients are too scared to go to the doctor or the dentist during the pandemic, or because the practices have been closed, or a combination. So they present late, and we've certainly seen patients presenting perhaps with more neck glands involved than perhaps we would have done.
An issue that continued to play on my mind was how all of this was affecting waiting times. Across the entire NHS, waiting times have been hit hard by the pandemic, but they appear to be affecting dentistry far worse. Dr. Helen Spencer is an oral surgical consultant, but is also the chair on the Hampshire and Isle of Wight Oral Surgery Managed Clinical Network. She was a part of the planning team for general and emergency dental care across the counties. I sat down with her to discuss the difficult decisions her and her team had to make.
In my hospital role, we had no information coming centrally. If you're in primary care, the Chief Dental Officer sends updates and information on how things are to be provided. Nothing came centrally on dentistry from the Chief Dental Officer to hospitals. And dentistry nationally is one of the lowest categories of priority. It probably isn't really helpful if you're a patient with toothache, because in general pain is pain, but teeth come on a lower category because generally it's not life-threatening. If it was, they were all seen, but patients with pain were waiting a long time. So the priority 2 patients, so the ones that needed treating within 4 to 6 weeks, were all swapped to different hospitals so they could be seen. I think it's really important to say that the fit and healthy people can get treatment, and that patients who have less able to access care are struggling more than other people. So patients who have increased comorbidities, the patients who are more at risk from attending hospital or more at risk from having a general anaesthetic or having to stay in afterwards, haven't been able to access care. And they're usually the patients who don't have an advocate to speak for themselves. They've been in care homes. The care homes are devastated. They've not been able to bring patients in, but they, not unreasonably, have to only operate on the healthy people because they don't have doctors on site to look after you if you've got a problem otherwise. So we will still be offering some consultations remotely. We're doing them by telephone at the moment, but they will be by video. But we've discovered what that doesn't work for. And we've learned that actually we can't do as much over the phone as we hoped we would be able to do at the start of the pandemic. So actually the manpower we're going to need to address that backlog is huge. And then you were asking me what really worried me most. It was sitting looking at those figures and really realising that we're not going to get rid of the backlog before I retire.
Wow.
Yeah, it's big. It's huge.
Even with the hard work of the managed clinical network, these waiting times continue to strangle the dental sector of the NHS. Dr. Mohammed Al-Gomi is a consultant maxillofacial surgeon, and while he and many others like him have been doing their best across the country, the figures still scare him.
I'm the clinical lead for an IMOS Intermediate Minor Oral Surgery Service for Thames Valley and Berkshire, and our waiting times in dental practice delivering IMOS are far greater than 26 weeks. Whether it's a software issue where the interrogation of the software delivers a set number of weeks or is targeted at a maximum, we manually have looked at our waiting times and we're well above that figure of 26. Certainly one of the units I supervise has a waiting list of 78 weeks. For patients to be seen. So if you purely go on chronological order, patients say referred end of 19, we've still got patients from end of 19, beginning of 20 that are in a waiting pattern, awaiting to come in. In this time frame, more patients are still being generated, quite rightly so, that need to come and access the service. So if we were to halt new referrals and say, okay, let's just get through the backlog, that scenario does not exist. That isn't a realistic scenario. I think if you were to ask me and say, Mo, when will we be where we were in December 19 or November 19? I personally think it will be years. I don't think it's weeks and I don't think it's months. I think all of our practices will change. I do not think that we will ever return to what we were before. I think this whole pandemic has been a reset button for the whole of the health service delivery in the UK. And we're going to have to accept a new way of working and delivering the service. And it may be an opportunity to improve on what we've been delivering before.
Pre-COVID, the government's NHS target from initial referral to completion was 18 weeks. In reality, that number is closer to 76 weeks, meaning you might have to wait a year and a half just to have a dental consultation. The pandemic has put a strain on the NHS like we have never seen before. When lockdown is over and all the dust settles, who knows what state the NHS will be in. But while the road ahead looks long and bleak, thanks to the brave work of the NHS and the amazing heroes that have been battling on the front lines, there is a pathway back to normality.